Hi, welcome to Variety FYC Fest. This is HBO Meet the Makers. My name is Jenelle Riley, and I'm an editor at Variety, and I'm so thrilled to be here with today's guests. Please join me in welcoming the creator, EP, writer, and director of The Staircase, Antonio Campos, co-creator, star, writer, executive producer, and director of Barry, Bill Hader, a director on Winning Time, The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty. For season 2, she's been elevated to EP, Salli Richardson-Whitfield, EP and director on House of the Dragon, Miguel Sapochnik, and co-EP and director of Black Lady Sketch Show, Bridget Stokes. Thank you all so much for being here, and congratulations on great shows. I actually want to start because I'm always curious where people begin. Like, what was your first job in this business? Did you start off like as a PA on a set or, working in a mailroom? How did you sort of get to where you are now? And let's start with Bridget.
My first job was reading scripts in the basement of Tribeca Productions, and simultaneously working for Urban World Film Festival. So that's how I got started.
Any scripts you read that you passed on or really liked that we might have heard of?
You know what? I got very attracted to Ruth Reichel's books. They had those as IP. I thought those were really impressive. They still haven't been made into movies. I would love to see them become something. And their big project was, it was the Matt Damon, Robert De Niro, Angelina Jolie.
Good Shepherd.
Yes, thank you. That was going through multiple rewrites. And I think the screenwriter didn't want to work on a computer. So it was a really involved process. Every time a rewrite would come in, it would finding what were the changes was a big deal.
Would they send it by fax or?
I don't remember how they received them. I just remember we'd have these, printed on one of those old printers with the little things on the side. So, to each their own.
I randomly just watched that movie last week. And did you know Eddie Redmayne plays Angelina Jolie and Matt Damon's son?
No, I didn't know that.
Fun trivia for everyone. Salli, what about for you?
Oh, well, I was an actress for 25 or more years before directing on my show, Eureka, that I was on for 5 years. So I started directing there.
Wow, that's so cool. And you still act, don't you?
No, and I didn't necessarily know I was giving it up. When I started directing, I thought I was going to be doing both. And then I just realized that this was what I was supposed to be doing, and just transitioned out pretty completely right away.
Bill, for you?
I was a production assistant. I was a PA on a bunch of low budget movies. One was called Two Little Heroes, which was like Home Alone, but with dogs. And my job was, it's the whole, don't work with kids and animals. And we had a ton of kids and animals. And that was, and then a movie called Final Payback with Richard Grieco. And then I worked my way up. Then I was a PA on a movie called Collateral Damage with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And then the first Spider-Man, I was an additional PA on big crowd scenes in the first Spider-Man, and a movie called K-Pax.
I remember K-Pax.
Oh, I like K-Pax.
Yeah. And I blew it on K-Pax because we were at Hollywood Center Studios, and I was supposed to lock up this area, and Jeff Bridges was hailing a cab in the scene, and 2 apes from Planet of the Apes walked into the background. They were also shooting. And they were like, whose lockup was that? And I remember my thing on the radio was like, am I supposed to be at the bottom of the stairs? Like, are you at the top of the stairs right now? And I was like, yes. I was like, go home. Yeah.
I'm sorry your career in PA work was cut short.
Yeah. I was not a good PA.
Miguel, for you?
I was an art department runner. I think on a film called Small Faces, directed by Gillis McKinnon, and really, I did lots of artwork. So I drew a lot. So one of the main characters it was set in the 60s in Glasgow, and I had to draw and paint hundreds of paintings and drawings for the main character, and then I storyboarded for him as well, and then I went on and did Train Spotting. So I went from Glasgow, went straight on. It was actually shot in Glasgow, even though it was set in Edinburgh. So I went to Train Spotting, which is like the most grueling experience as a runner I've ever had. And I realized I'm not a good runner. Especially when they say to you, we need to know what opium suppositories look like. And you're like, got it. And you go out, and everywhere you go, I'm trying to get a reference for opium suppositories. And the guys in the pharmacy are like, and what are you doing? I'm working on a film. What's it called? Train Spotting. They're like, sorry, go away. And that was where I started. And then I did storyboarding, and that I think that got me into it properly.
Antonio, for you?
I started making movies pretty young. I was 13, and I had done the New York Film Academy program when I was 13. I had lied about my age at that time, and I told them I was 16 so I could get in, because they didn't have a teen program, but they would take me if I was 16. And I did that, and I made my first short films there, and I was really excited just to keep doing something. So the next summer, I applied for an internship at Shooting Gallery, and I was an intern at Shooting Gallery. And I don't know if anybody remembers, Shooting Gallery was kind of famous for Sling Blade, kind of like a big indie studio in the mid to late 90s. And I was really committed. I was very serious about it. I was kind of like a little bit of a nerd about it, and I just wanted to get in first and leave last. And then I was doing so well, the guy who ran the mailroom made me head intern at 14, which I don't know if he did because he really thought I should be it, or because he thought that would really mess with everybody else and piss everybody else off. So I was kind of running the mailroom when I was 14 and telling these, 20-something-year-olds where they were supposed to deliver packages and how many script copies they needed to make and who they needed to get coverage to and stuff. And it got really uncomfortable at a certain point. But I kept coming back, and I kept interning there for a few years whenever I could during the year. And then I kept interning different places. I interned at Jonathan Demi's company called Clinica Estetico, and I worked for a few producers there. And then I went to intern for a couple of managers, Gene Parsagian and Johnny Planko. And then I interned at Scorsese Presents the Blues. So I just kind of kept bouncing around, trying to learn as much as I could. I didn't do that much PA. I did one PA job, which was You Can Count on Me. I was a PA on that for the last few days, and I played wiffle ball with Matthew Broderick, which was sort of my fun thing about it.
Always wanted to play wiffle ball with Matthew Broderick.
Did you keep lying about your age during all this, or have you come? After my short film, I was just saying that I was the age I was. I eventually lied about my age about something else when I was doing stand-up. I did stand-up.
Antonio's actually only 15.
Yeah, I'm 12. No, but it was easy for me to lie about my age at that time because I had facial hair from a very young age. So I had like a full beard at like 13. So I could get away with it. So it was like weird in school, but then it worked when I went out of school and I had to, try and buy beer for my friends or whatever. It's good.
Well, again, you're all coming off wonderful seasons of your shows, or in Antonio's case, limited series. And I'd actually like to start at the beginning with some of the newer shows. Antonio, what interested you in dramatizing the events of The Staircase, which has already been a documentary, but also making the choice to incorporate the story of the making of the documentary into the series? It's working on so many levels here.
Yeah. Well, it was first sent to me in 2008, the initial 8 episodes. They were sent to me by a producer who had the rights to the documentary. And he asked if I was interested in adapting it as a feature. And I watched it, and I had never heard anything about the case or the documentary. And I was immediately taken by it. And when I met with him, he told me about the director and the producer and that they felt very differently about the case. And he also told me that the editor was in a relationship with Michael Peterson at the time. And so immediately it was like, oh, well, this is all part of the story. And if you're going to tell the story of the staircase, you have to acknowledge the fact that there was this French film crew embedded in the house for, over 2 years. And for me, that was the end. Like, I was like, this is what makes this story special. And so from that time, from about the end of 2008, I was trying to make it a feature until around 2015, when I decided to try and make it as a series. And then it's been another, 4 or 5 years trying to get that set up.
So the original script didn't address I guess the elephant in the room, or the film crew in the room in this case.
No, the film crew was always part of this, the regional. I wrote a few drafts of it for Fox Searchlight, and the film crew was always part of it. And over like every draft, it was like, oh, okay, let me focus on this character or this character, because I could never quite do justice to all of them in one feature script. So when I finally decided to do it as a series, it made so much more sense. I could I could really explore the whole world. But it was great kind of prep, because by the time I came into the series, I had already kind of looked at it from so many different angles.
And things were probably happening in real time that were changing your script every day.
Oh, that's why I stuck with it for so long, because, when I first got involved, he was in prison for life. That was the story. That was the end. And then 2 years later, he was being released for a retrial. And then, 5 years later, 6 years later, he's taking the Alfred plate. So it was just like everything. And then he had broken up. He and the editor, Sophie, had broken up, and that changed the dynamics of the story too. And yeah, it was just. And then I learned more about the owl theory, and there was just all this stuff that kind of kept revealing itself over the years. So
I'm a believer in the owl theory.
That's good.
Salli, in addition to directing on Winning Time, you directed an episode of Gilded Age, I know, and you've been elevated to EP for season 2 of Winning Time. I'm curious, can you talk about what interested you in joining the show? And is this a world that you know at all, or knew before, coming aboard?
Well, it's sort of a mixture of many things. It's Adam McKay. I do love that time period. I am a basketball fan, played in high school. I don't know how you honestly can direct the show and not know basketball. Amazing actors, amazing scripts. You just kind of have this big soup pot of reasons why to be there. And then honestly, I always love a new challenge. And really the big challenge of this show is, yes, you're going to do the basketball, but everyone has seen the basketball. Everyone, you can watch, footage of it on YouTube all day, but what is that narrative inside the story? I mean, inside the game. And it is very complicated, obviously on a TV schedule too, to get that done. And especially when people know the outcome. We know that he made that shot. We know that he lost that game. So how do you make it interesting? And trying to figure out that puzzle has been very exciting for me. And I think that we proved that we can make these games very exciting. And then, we also were shooting on film. We're shooting with these vintage Ikegami cameras, TV cameras. We're doing 8mm. We're doing black and white. So on its face, something that could be very simple, I still have the opportunity to really come up with very interesting ways to tell this story. And they really give me free rein to do what I want to do.
Now, as someone who actually doesn't know basketball that well, I don't know the end of the story. So I'm surprised at I suppose I could Wikipedia it, but I don't want to do that. How did you make it so appealing to people like me who don't know anything about this world?
Well, because when it comes down to it, it is what is this? So, and I think that again is more of the challenge of how do we tell the relationship with these players within the game. And that's what someone like you is coming to see too, right? If you're not into sports, it's really going to be about what these relationships are. And even if you don't know Pat Riley and Magic Johnson, you're still going to be pulled in by this amazing story. And if you do know the story, then you're really into it because, you've only been able to see it from the outside. And now you kind of get a peek into who these men really really were, and what their hurts are and what the drama of it all is. And it's really become a fascinating world for me to explore.
Well, I came for Spencer Garrett and I stayed because it's a great.
He is the best Chick Hearn ever. And honestly, if you know who these guys are, the casting is amazing. It's like spot on. And I ran into Byron Scott and a few of the players, and it's just been amazing how close these actors are to them and their personality and the core of who they are. So it's just been really fun to watch the journey of the show.
Miguel, House of the Dragon came into its first season with I think we can all say it's an understatement, high expectations. I'm curious what drew you to the show and how you went about making it your own while still being true to this universe that had already been established.
What drew me to the show? I mean, the challenge, really, I think, because basically what you just said, which is the expectations. Funny enough, the expectations was high, but when we showed it the first time in LA, you could see everybody they were just relieved. They were just like, Casey Ploys get out of a car and comes over to me, the head of HBO, after he saw it. He said, he didn't say hello. He just said, Miguel, the first thing I thought after I saw the pilot, and I said, what? And he goes, relief. And that's the best compliment I'll ever pay you. And I was just like, okay. And I think that was really a thing. It was like there was so much riding on it that and they had obviously had the experience of a previous version called Blood Moon, or kind of a previous spin-off, that everyone was just kind of holding their breath. And so in a way, for me, because I've made the show before, that made it easier, because it's like, just do the thing you were doing before, but make sure that the story's tight. And that seemed really important. And try to make I thought it was a challenge. I always find it a challenge with pilots, because pilots are inherently kind of boring because they're all set up. And so it was like, how do we make this engaging and interesting? So I was just interested in the filmmaking. And I think that and I think we were lucky because we got really good cast. And I think we were lucky because we got, because we made our days and all the other things that you managed to do when someone's holding a gun to your head. So I just thought it was like I wonder if we can do this. I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if I can do this. And then realizing, all right, if you do the thing you were doing before, you're essentially doing it. And then what's important is if you pay your respects to the show, then you can depart. But it was really important to begin with to understand that everything that we were doing was really taking a bunch of people who probably a portion of them who were very vocal were like, season 8. And so you're basically taking them and you're going, yeah, remember, this was fun. And you kind of take them through it. And it's a little bit like hand holding and taking people through something that they fondly remember and reconnecting them with it, but with different characters, and then allowing the characters to take over and it become its own thing.
So a lot of people would avoid something like this because they would be intimidated by the prospect of following in Game of Thrones. But that was part of the appeal for you? Yeah,
I like being intimidated.
How do you sort of tune out all the noise, though? Well, the world hasn't seen your show yet.
I think you either do or you don't. I don't listen to anything. I just focus on the things like, how can I make, when I was doing episodic television, and I would watch every episode I could of the thing I was going in to watch. I would sit down with the showrunner if possible and really try and understand what the story was that they wanted me to tell and where it was in the overall story. And I would just say, I'm going to make the best possible version of that story, rather than I'm going to come in, I'm going to show you my stuff. It was like, for me, it was like, don't do that. Give them the thing that they want. And I think what's interesting is by doing that, you actually do tune everything out. You just like focus on what you're doing, which is like, for me, it was like, how can we make this really good? How can we make people not hate us?
For Bill and Bridget, you both came into third seasons of your already acclaimed shows this year. I'm sort of curious, was there any worry about living up to the standard you'd already set? And what did you set out to achieve with season 3? And let's start with Bill.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I mean, we're the story was we tend to write ourselves into corners, and so season two, the Henry Winkler character kind of knows who Barry is, and so yeah, I mean, you're just trying to tell the story. I mean, the best you can. I don't. Yeah, I don't try to go into it too much thinking, oh my gosh, it's season 3, what do we do? You just try to just, it's like taking it scene by scene and like what makes sense. And, that's pretty much it. I mean, today, actually, after I get off this, I'm going for my first day of editing on season 4, which is terrible, because everybody on here can relate. I am going to be wearing running shoes because I know I'm going to watch it, and then I'm going to go get something out of my car, and I'm just going to walk around the lot and try to talk myself out of, having a mental breakdown. Because it's this whole thing of trying to get back to what you had in your head, So,
but I was going to say, that the it's the killer. The moment that you try and top yourself with what you've been doing, you're in trouble. You have to do what's appropriate for the story. Because if you don't do what's appropriate for the story, then all the pressures that you're talking about, they get on top of you. So I just lowered my expectations so much. Like I was just like, this is going to be so bad. And it was like, and I really, like, with conviction and love. So I would go in there, I just think, I'm never going to watch this. And then gradually you're kind of like, well, it's not so bad. Actually, that might work.
My problem is I'm in it.
No, that's terrible.
I'm looking at my face and I'm like, this actor is
right.
I'm always fascinated to know if other directors feel the same way when they see that first cut, because you see it and you go, well, I shouldn't be directing because this absolutely does not look like what I thought we were shooting. This is terrible. So it's good to know everyone feels that way.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same thing as performing too, where your mind, your voice, and you think you look and act a certain way, and then so it's double. I don't know if you have the same thing on the Black Lady sketch show, or if anything like that happens.
Black Lady sketch show, it feels like is a place where I don't experience that as much. And I think the reason is because I came in, season 3 was my first season with the show. And we had a lot of department heads in our editorial team who won a couple Emmys for the show. We're so on it. And we're giving these editors cuts that were already so layered and brought in, improv that we'd done and side stories that we'd found on the day. So this is, I have experienced that many times, but this is the first time that I don't feel that as much because, and I also am going into my first editor session for season 4 today after this.
HBO have us on a schedule.
No. But no, it's been it's become a show through the past 2 seasons that I've been on it that's become so dialed in, and our showrunner is so demanding in the best way that we're just incredibly organized and on task, that we're and working as a team, that we're getting results now in season 4 that we're all just sort of very excited about, very excited to show the world.
Were you already an existing fan of the show when you came on board?
Absolutely. And to answer your previous question, I think, coming in, having seen 2 very funny seasons, I had the same intent of saying, well, what does the showrunner and creator want this show to be, and what do they want for season 3? And what Robin and I kind of came up with was, we want this to be the most cinematic version of the show. So that was our goal, is to go, well, we have 40 sketches. We want each one to have a genre and a tone, and to build out the world for each sketch, and not repeat ourselves, and really dive into what that specific thing is. And then, of course, the big question you're always going back to is it funny?
Bill, I actually want to go back to something you said before, because every season when Barry ends, I'm like, how are they going to get out of this? Are you telling me that for seasons 1 and 2, you didn't know? You ended the finale and you were like, you literally wrote yourself into a corner?
Yeah, we do that every season. We just did it. Season 3 ends on a real
I think everyone's seen it. There's no spoiler.
yeah. I go to jail at the end of season 3. It's like, what? I mean, even when we were shooting it, I remember our script supervisor was like, "What happens?" And I was like, I don't know. I'm like, don't ask me that question, And then you have that awful. It was during the pandemic, so we were like this, all on a Zoom call, and that awful silence of everyone saying what they're doing, how's everybody holding up and everything, and we're just avoiding the elephant in the room, which is what happens? How do we write 8 episodes if he's in prison? So, but yeah, we tend to do that, but it's kind of like we were saying, you just take it one step at a time. And the bigger thing is with Barry, at least, is that the guy's a murderer, and we didn't want it to be like this glib kind of funny murderer thing. We wanted to, approach it, realistically. And so it has gotten a little, our thing kind of is at the end of it, we'll figure it out. We'll feel good. And then we're like, cool. Okay. This is not funny at all. This is like, we got to go back and kind of, it's kind of like you become like, you write the very straight version of it. And then it's like, when you're watching a movie with your friends and it's like very serious. So you start, doing Mystery Science Theater with it, you know what I mean? Where you're trying to like go, wouldn't it be funny if this happened or this happened? And that's essentially kind of what we end up doing, which is like, wouldn't it be funny if Henry Winkler got attacked by a bunch of dogs right now, And then we have to put poor Henry Winkler in the backyard and he's like, is that thing really going to attack me? And we're like, you're going to be fine. We're cutting it. Don't and he's, and all that stuff. So, but yeah, to answer your question, no, we never know.
Something else all your shows have in common are you have these amazing ensembles. I'm curious about working with your casts as a director and what makes the chemistry so special. And since we're here, let's just start with Bill, because you're working with your cast not only as a director, but as a co-star. How do you sort of, step outside one or the other, or do you not? Is it all wrapped together?
Yeah, it's kind of together. And then, they help you as well. You know what I mean? Where, it's just like any sort of scene partner thing was that all right? Was that feel okay? Or, sometimes you can see the resentment in their eyes because I'm directing them. So it's like, it isn't fun when you're like cut and you're like, hey, can you do this a little? It's like, hey, dude, you're my scene partner. You don't get to say that to me. And it's like, so I remember being on other movies like Superbad and things like that, where Seth Rogen or someone would be like, yeah, don't do that on the next take. And you're like, all right, sorry. So I've been there, but it's really great. There was a scene in season 3 with Sarah Goldberg where Barry gets really mad at her at work. And it was kind of the moment when he, and I really went off and went dark, which was right. And I just remember, going, Sarah, are you okay after that? And she was like, wow, you got quite loud, Bill, he's from Canada. And that kind of just brought the tension down, and it was very sweet, She's like, you can go louder if you want.
Did you?
It's quite loud, We were like making jokes in between the takes and stuff and everything. So whether she knew it or not, that was helping me, because I was very anxious.
Bridget, the cast of A Black Lady Sketch Show is so amazing. I would think one of the hardest parts of your job is just not laughing.
Truly, we ruin takes all the time. One of the nice things about this show is that we carve out a really good chunk of time for rehearsals. So we really get to see each sketch and figure out kind of what works and what doesn't. And I think that helps us on the day find these sort of sub stories and tangents to go off on. the improv on the show is kind of what makes it so special, is that we honor the script and then we go fully off the rails very quickly. So being able to sort of dial in that process with the cast is really nice during our rehearsal time.
And a lot of them have been working together for a long time. So I imagine there's already existing chemistry. It must be nice to step into.
It's fantastic. And you can see, each cast member has to form distinct relationships with each other. And so there are the cast members who've been working together the whole time. There are new cast members who come on board who bring their own new energy. And so just finding those new relationships and how everybody's going to work together is super fun. And I think what shakes it up is that, every other day we'll have a guest actor or more than one guest actor come in and they bring a new element to it. So it always stays sort of fresh and fun.
Antonio, you have this amazing cast from top to bottom. I'm wondering specifically if you can talk about casting Colin Firth sort of against type. I've seen Apartment Zero, so maybe it's not against type, but people sort of think of him as this genial person, and he is so chillingly good as in this nebulous area. Was that your idea?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about Colin. Maggie Cohn, my co-runner, and I were really excited by the idea of Colin, because it's always exciting when you cast against type. I've always been more excited by that kind of casting than sort of putting somebody in because that they've done it before. And it's just sort of, you go, well, I've seen enough of this person's work to know that they can go there, or I've talked to this person and I know them well enough that I know that they have it in them, or they're really excited by that idea. And with Colin, we had seen enough sort of in his other work where we had seen a darker side or a version of him where he keeps a secret. And we knew that he had we just knew that he had it in him to go there. And then, after one conversation with him and seeing how he read the part, how he interpreted it, that he was like, that it was going to be great. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, I don't know. I sometimes I might not even know an actor's previous work, but I've met them and I really feel good about them and I like them and they feel very excited about doing this thing. That might be enough for me to want to cast them. It's different for every person, for every part, honestly.
Salli and Miguel, you both have these amazing sprawling ensemble casts. And I have to think that with a cast that large, you have so many different styles of acting. I'm curious how as directors, you work with everyone and make it into a cohesive whole.
Well, for me, I'm a mom, I'm a sister, I'm a psychiatrist on certain days. And we sort of have these two extremes, we'll have these huge, humongous, scenes with everyone with a lot of personalities and people who are used to maybe having their input. And they have all learned that if there is more than 3 of you in the scene, then you must go where I tell you to go and do what I say at the time. And getting them to trust that is just what we need to do to accomplish something with 700 background and, and things coming in and out. But then we go to these more intimate scenes. And I mean, honestly, we're very lucky. If I have Adrian Brody and John C. Reilly in a scene together, they're coming there with their A game. They know who their people are. And I'm just there to, make really tiny little adjustments and we find it together. And, luckily we have the time to really, really make something beautiful here and give them that space to, look around and feel it out on those days. But, it really does become 2 different extremes of working with lots of different personalities.
And I mean this as no small feat that I think this is Adrian Brody's best work ever.
He is he's amazing. And like I said, we couldn't have gotten a better Pat Riley. And he's been you know, I don't know, when he first came in, he didn't realize he was going to start as the insecure Pat Riley. And he's had to, but it's been great to like, okay, well, we're here. Now we're in these next 2 episodes. And now Pat needs to be here to get him to, where we'll be in this next season of the Pat Riley. So it's been great to be there and be a part of figuring out when he changes and what that changes, what that change means for him.
And Miguel, for you also have this great blend of, faces I recognize, and then these new actors who are it's so exciting to see.
Yeah, they were. It was interesting because we shot episode 7 first. Because why shoot episode 1 first? I would basically, because of COVID, they hadn't built the stages, which means we couldn't build the sets, which means we didn't have anything to shoot on. So we had to start by shooting episode 7, which begins with the death and a funeral, and everybody's out of sorts. And I thought, hey, this is good. Nobody knows what they're doing. That's what happens. So let's shoot that. And we actually begun with every single cast member in the show in 2 scenes, a funeral and then a wake, and the wake was 14 pages long, and the funeral was wordless. And it was just like it was the I'm going to get to know these actors all at the same time, and no one's ever going to get enough time. And so I made a point of talking to them before we got there, because that helps. And really, I believe very strongly is like you have the script and then you talk to the actors, and then they make the character their own. Basically, you come up with a plan, and then the plan is a trajectory. And sometimes with more experienced actors, you do it less so, but they have more questions about where it's going. With less experienced actors, you give them tasks and the task might be in conflict with other actors, and that's the point, so you give people a story and they can start using that as their jumping off point, and then you see who does what and who's comfortable with doing what. I had 6 children. One of them was 9 years old, and he was acting opposite Steve Toussaint, who's like this 6'4", like really like just presence. This guy has presence, and they're trying to have this conversation, and Harvey, the little 9-year-old, he's just not interested. Like, he's all over the place. Except where he needs to be. But there are 40 extras and there's 24 cast, and you still got to do it, and it's raining and you've got 4 days to shoot it. And so there were so many things that meant that we couldn't do the thing that we would like to do, which is get to know the actors in one-on-one scenes and then build on that. And so a lot of it, I think, was about trying to get everybody to understand the scale. And I think was quite tough to begin with, because some of the actors are very established. And then you basically have to say, it's not about you guys, it's about the show. And the show is really big, and you'll see. But what it means is, let's find a system that works. And what I ended up doing a whole bunch that I've never done before is I treated the big ensemble scenes like a stage play, chose a direction for the camera, like that everyone's going to play it to this way, and I'm going to try and do that and stay around here, and had everybody learn the entire scene even when they're not on screen, what they were doing and where they were going. And we were doing this big wake scene, and on day 4 or 5, like, we thought, okay, I'd done all the close-ups first, and then I thought, let's do the wides. And we came out on these cranes and did the wides, and you realized everybody knew exactly what they were doing at any single moment. And so you could shoot it as a stage play. And it became deeply satisfying, I think, for everybody, because everyone felt like, I've mastered this, I've got it. And because of the way that the show is made, there were so many scenes where you had to have everybody in. And when you had to have everybody in, sometimes people felt left out, and you had to go, you had to focus a lot more on saying, don't worry, I'll get to you, or chill out, or you're not in this, you can go home, these guys will be fine, they don't need it. So it was a lot of politics, actually, kind of just figuring out, where do you start as well, and it's like, whose scene is it, and all of those things dictated all sorts of decisions that I've never found are so vital to the energy of the scene. Because once the energy goes, then everyone's like, and then you've got a problem. But then you get like people like Paddy Considine, who just like, once he finds it, he was just like going all day. When there was a particular actor who had a very large part in a very large ensemble scene, I would make sure I'd spent time with him before, or her, and that they had, so that they became the axis, and we shot that way. But I'd start with their coverage, so I'd actually start with the close-ups and all the details and make them continuous shots, even though I knew I was going to cut out of them, because it just got the flow going. Then we understood what the scene was about.
Well, again, I want to thank you all for keeping me so entertained over this last year. I want to thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for joining us at Variety's FYC Fest. And for those of you watching, please stay tuned for the rest of the program. Thank you so much.